The next speaker, or two speakers we have the pleasure to hear are from Dr. Shirene Cece-Clements and Debby MacDonald. They're Animal Cops Detroit, the veterinarian's role in small animal cruelty. Dr. Shirene Cece-Clements is a graduate of MSU and is the supervising veterinarian for the Veterinary Center of the Michigan Humane Society Detroit Center for Animal Care. Among other duties, Dr. Cece responds to requests from the Cruelty Investigation Department to examine animals that are rescued from abusive or neglected situations. In her 26 years with MHS, she has examined written medicals and testified in court for a variety of abuse cases, including starvation, gunshot wounds, stabbings, and dogfightings. Debby MacDonald is the Chief Investigator for the MHS Cruelty Investigation Department, as well as the Facility Director for MHS Detroit Center for Animal Care. Debby began working with MHS in 1982 as a volunteer. Since then, she has held a variety of positions, including adoption counselor, animal evaluator, field agent, and eventually cruelty investigator. Debby worked solely within the Cruelty Investigation Department for 16 years before becoming a facility director in 2007. Debby is certified by the Law Enforcement Training Institute of the University of Missouri's Cruelty Investigation School and also serves as an instructor and presenter for cruelty investigation professional development opportunities nationwide. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Can everybody hear? Thank you for having us here today. I'd like to start out today by talking a little bit about what animal cruelty is. The role of the veterinarian in animal cruelty is very important. But for all of us, we have different perceptions about how animals should be cared for. For some of us, it's a heated doghouse and a safe kennel in the backyard. For others, it's, curled up on our couch with a rawhide. My dog is probably in my bed right now, where he's not supposed to be. But we all have these different perceptions. When we start to talk about animal cruelty, it's important that we realize that we have to take that element out of it. It's really not about how we feel animals should be cared for. It's about what the state law allows for. And as we prepare these cases for court, we have to focus on what is the violation of our state statute and what documentation can we take to court that's going to make our case, that's going to win our case. And that's why the veterinary is so important in all of this. The slides that we're going to look at today, I'm going to actually talk a little bit about what animal cruelty is. We're going to look at a lot of slides pretty quickly of animal cruelty cases, and they're graphic and they're disturbing. But what I really like for you to do is take the time to look at them in terms of how you would describe them in court. How would you use what you're seeing to make your case? And that's what veterinarians are asked to do when they come and they testify for us. It's really not about how we feel the animal should be cared for, but it's about what is legal and what is a violation of our state law. The most common types of cases we see are neglect cases, and they result because people fail to provide adequate care for animals. They fail to provide adequate food, water, shelter, medical attention. They don't tether their animals properly. They don't provide adequate sanitation. They don't groom their animals properly. And they hoard their animals. And these are the basic things that people fail to do that result in what we see as our misdemeanor neglect cases. And it happens for a lot of reasons. Some people don't know how to care for their animals properly. There's a lack of education. And it seems strange to us, but a lot of people don't know what adequate food is. They don't know what a quality diet is. They don't know what adequate shelter is. Some people just aren't motivated. They're not going to get off their couch when it's cold to go feed their dog. Simple as that. It's cold outside. They're not going to go feed their dog. Some people don't have the resources, and they don't know what to do about it. Some people get caught up in that disposable pet cycle. They'll just get another one next spring. And some people do have poor mental health issues, and they just can't put all the pieces together to do the right thing. We're going to start to talk about failure to provide food and water. It seems like a pretty simple thing, but that's what we see most often. It could be insufficient quantity, insufficient quality, or in some cases it's actually not a case of food or water, but instead a medical condition. I don't know how many times I thought I brought in a case of, no food and water, straight neglect case, and Dr. Cece's done my necropsy, and there's the corn cob, and the animal's been obstructed. So, there are a lot of different reasons for these cases, and that's why our veterinarians are so important. But we want to look at the facts. How skinny is the dog? What does the dog's environment look like? And we know that this is how animals should be kept, but we have to be able to articulate that. Even with our necropsies, we have to be able to step back and objectively look at these conditions of these animals to present our cases in court. And these are the animal cruelty cases. They're not the cases where we just really don't care for all the animals being kept. Shelter is something that we battle every year. Animals without adequate shelter. We live in a very cold state. In our area in Detroit, we have a lot of animals that are short hair. We see a lot of pit bulls. Very, very active animals, very, very short coats. They don't do well in the winter. This is not adequate shelter for a dog, and this is not a fish. But it's not uncommon to find dogs housed in inadequate housing. And it's really simple. What we're looking for is dogs to have a dog house with straw, adequate bedding, insulation, a door flap, something that's going to help them maintain their body heat in the cold winter months. It doesn't seem like it's that complicated, but we take hundreds of no-shelter calls every year. And the no-shelter calls present other problems. Once we have animals outside with no shelter in the wintertime, then we have dogs usually that have poor body weight and have other medical issues associated with being out in the cold. No shelter cases are not uncommon. To see dogs chained out like this, we look at that environment when we present our cases, and we let our veterinarians know what type of environment we found these dogs in when we ask them to perform our medical exams. No shelter, in addition, leads to animals that are underweight. This time of year, we start to see our dogs drop weight. A lot of the dogs that we're seeing outside right now that had okay body weight through the summer, that were maintaining their body weight, not great, but maintaining, are already starting to lose weight. They'll drop weight, and we will find more and more underweight dogs as the season goes on, usually through November into December and January, because they don't have adequate shelter, and people haven't really increased the number of calories those dogs are getting throughout the winter months, even if they have sort of okay housing. But no shelter is something that's, like I said, it's common, and that, when we bring these dogs in, not only are we presenting the animals to our veterinarians, but we're describing the conditions that they were found in. Just having a doghouse isn't enough, and it's important that we let people know that having a doghouse alone is not enough to keep your dog alive in the winter in Michigan. Yes, this is an igloo doghouse. There's no bedding. The dog didn't have an adequate diet, and he didn't make it through the winter. And that is not an uncommon scenario, and it's something that, we will, again, explain to our veterinarians as we're presenting our cases, and they're helping us through that prosecution process. Improper tethering is another pretty standard type of prosecution for us, unfortunately. Dogs are tied out quite a bit. People don't want their pets to run loose. They don't want to get tickets for dogs running at large. They want to keep their animals confined to their properties, so they chain them up. They just don't always do it well. And as a result, it leads to a lot of injuries that in turn lead to a lot of court cases. Embedded collars and embedded harnesses are common. Embedded cables. We see those probably in the summertime on a weekly basis. Sometimes multiple animals a week come in with embedded injuries because animals haven't been tethered. There's nobody that really talks to people about how to properly tether their animals. And as a result, they don't think that process through. They don't check on their animals on a regular basis. And we're out there, we're removing animals and we're writing arrest warrants. Animals hang all of the time because they're not properly tethered. They're tangled up so that they can't reach their shelters. And their chains become embedded in their necks. Sometimes multiple chains become embedded in their necks. and they have to be surgically removed by our veterinarians. This dog had an embedded collar and had an embedded cable as well. And these are common injuries that we see as a result of inadequate care. This was a dog that was tied out with a clothesline. He got tangled up in the clothesline, nobody paid attention, and that clothesline became embedded in a few different locations. We go to our veterinarians for medical cases as well. We know that there's something wrong, but it's our veterinarians that tell us exactly what is wrong. And they give us the details. They tell us how long an injury took to get a certain way, if there'd been treatment for that injury, if the injury was painful, all of those things. And we rely on our veterinarians for these cases. Without that going into court, we don't have a case. And for us to pick up dogs from homes where people have kept them and haven't provided the care that they need, again, is a common thing. We write warrants, we bring in warrants every week. Animals that are going to result in warrants that are written for misdemeanor violations, for basic neglect violations. Sanitation is another issue, and sanitation is much more difficult for us. It's not just an issue about, I need to cook out in my backyard, and the neighbor's backyard smells bad. Sanitation has to affect the health of the animal for us to actually pursue a cruelty case. And again, that comes back to our veterinarians being able to tell us how those unsanitary conditions had a negative impact on those animals. Lack of grooming is another issue that we deal with. A lot of the animals that we see are never clipped. We brought in a small dog the other day. It probably should have been about a 20-pound dog. That was incredibly matted to the point that it couldn't use its legs, couldn't defecate properly. And when we were done shaving the dog, it weighed 8 pounds. And you wouldn't know that because the hair coat was so thick and so matted. But these are what we're looking for when we're looking at misdemeanor violations. A lot of times as we shave these dogs down, we find maggot infestation. So not only does the lack of grooming itself present a cruel situation, but oftentimes as we start to shave those animals, we find other underlying issues that nobody really knew were there until we were able to get that dog in and get treatment for it. Hoarding is a complicated issue that we deal with, and it's an issue that we really have to rely on our veterinarians for. There are times where you're able to take a veterinarian out to location with us to help us with these cases. Hoarding is basically a situation where somebody's accumulated a large number of animals. They don't realize that there's a problem. The conditions continue to deteriorate. And it's also having a negative impact on the person who's caring for the animals as well as the animals. I think a lot of people have heard a lot about hoarding, and years ago, we never heard anything about hoarding. It was just, it's the crazy cat lady. Everybody's heard the crazy cat lady in their neighborhood, but now, we have TV shows about hoarding. And it's a very real problem, and it's a very difficult problem to deal with because the individuals that we're working with don't see it as a problem. And sometimes we're able to work with them and convince them to drop their numbers, but other times we're not. And we have to pursue warrants to remove the animals from those locations. And we have to go to court. And when we go to court, we have to have a veterinarian that's able to support what we've done. And we have to have a veterinarian that's able to tell us why these conditions are bad for an animal to live in. A veterinarian that's an expert. I'm not a veterinarian, I'm not an expert in that area. I need to bring my veterinarian to say, this is why it's unhealthy for these animals. Not all hoarders hoard cats. We tend to think that every hoarding case we're going to go to, we're going to find 100 cats. This was a hoarding situation that had 35 large birds. And the individual that cared for them was blind and also collected power tools. So as we walked through the house, there were large drill cases and air compressors and snow blowers and birds, all packed into this very small house. So, it really is a mental health issue, and we have to really treat it as such as we're dealing with hoarders. It's more than just basic animal cruelty. And the animals that are in these situations, they may have food, they may have good body weight, but the sanitary conditions are definitely affecting their quality of life and their health. Our abuse cases are always more severe. These are the ones that we usually see that make TV news at night. These are the situations where somebody has gone out and intentionally done something to an animal, where they've actively made a decision to harm an animal. They haven't just forgotten to get off the couch. They haven't just, oh, well, I'll put Straw in the doghouse later. I'll take him to the vet next week when I get my check. These are the cases where somebody has beaten an animal or stabbed an animal or shot an animal or actively done something to torture an animal. And we say, why? Why does this happen? Why do people do that? They do it for a lot of reasons. Anger, rage, revenge, control. They may have an altered state of mental health, or they may have a mental health disorder. We've had multiple cases this summer where animals were actually the victims of domestic violence situations. This year we were able to get our first warrant for a turtle. It's a felony warrant. We had an individual come into a home, pick up a kitten, throw it out the front door, domestic violence, situation, major dispute, threw the kitten out the front door, broke the kitten's leg, and threw the itty-bitty turtle out the front door. We found the kitten, and we found the turtle. Well, we brought the turtle and the kitten back in. The turtle had a little bit of a head trauma, bloody nose, and we were able to treat both of the animals, and we took the case down to the prosecutor's office, and the prosecutor said, no, this is a situation involving domestic violence. This is a violent individual. This individual needs to be charged with everything that we can charge them with, and we got a felony charge for the kitten. We also got a felony charge for Rudy the turtle, which was a first for us, but it was rewarding to see the case taken so seriously, to see that prosecutors were making that connection between domestic violence and animal abuse. But again, a lot of these cases that we see that are active cruelty cases are our shootings, our stabbings, our burnings, and those are our felony animal cruelty cases. And we rely heavily on our veterinarians for our felony animal cruelty cases, because just like in a human case, you have to put that case together and you have to tie everything together. Your witness statements, how the actual injuries occurred, what type of injuries they were, and all of that has to match when we present these cases in court. Our animal fighting cases make up another block of what we do, and I'll go to Dr. Cece and say, so what do you know about chickens? and she knows, yeah, here it goes. We have something else going on. We actually handle cockfighting cases. We have cockfighting in the city of Detroit. It's maybe not on the same scale that it is in some of the rural areas in the state. It's more of a basement or a garage activity. But we do have cockfighting. We do cockfighting search warrants. And we find that these birds are bred specifically for fighting. Large sums of money exchange hands. They generally will have their combs and wattles removed. They're going to have their natural spurs cut, and they're going to have sharp implements attached to their legs. It's a very organized business. And again, we have to have our veterinarians to help us through these cases. I will ask Dr. Cece all kinds of questions. Well, Dr. Cece, what do you think about the spurs on this bird? What do you think about the spurs on that bird? Are those trimmed? Are those not trimmed? And she helps us through all of that. This is a rooster that's had its natural spurs cut. A couple of wattles were trimmed. And they'll attach gaffs and knives to the legs. Usually use supplements like Rooster Booster. They have a lot of secret formulas that they purchase that they inject these birds with that are stimulants so that they'll fight better. And it is a business. It's also a felony in our state. Just to attend a cockfight is a felony. Just to own cockfighting paraphernalia is a felony. Dogfighting is an area that we spend a great deal of time on. Our department is constantly investigating dogfighters. It's an ongoing underlying theme for our department. It never ends. As our dogfighters evolve, we have had to evolve. It generally always involves pit bulls. The investigations require a great deal of time and resources. Unfortunately, a lot of smaller animal control agencies don't have those resources and don't have that time. Individuals involved in dogfighting are usually involved in other illegal activities. We track that, and we find that they are usually involved in narcotics, homicides, home invasions, robberies, domestic violence situations. And these fights usually will result in severe injury to the animals and sometimes death. These dogs are bred specifically for this purpose. When we look at our organized dogfighters, just the breeding and sale of these dogs alone generates thousands of dollars. The dogs are fought by contract. There are agreements that are set up in place 6 to 8 weeks prior to these matches taking place. The amount of money that's going to be bet is set up ahead of time. Money is put up for forfeit. We have had dogs fought out of our area for $250,000. $30,000 fights are uncommon. So dogfighting is a very big business. These dogs are conditioned just like athletes. They're prepared for their fight. They're generally fought in pits. They provide their own medical attention for these animals. They carry kits that have penicillin, that have Dax. I usually, when we investigate a dogfighter, I will bring back a box of medications and I will say, Dr. Cece, what are these? And she will sit down with me and tell me what all of them are used for. Because a lot of times we see new things that we've never seen before. Their fights are listed in underground publications. And they usually result in a lot of very serious injuries to the animals. Our dogfighting cases have really taken off as a result of online activity. You know, we used to, be able to find out from somebody's disgruntled girlfriend that there might be a dogfight. Somebody get mad at their boyfriend and call us and say, hey, my boyfriend's a dogfighter. We love disgruntled girlfriends. They're wonderful. Ticked off ex-wives are even better. But that's where we got a lot of our information. But now with the use of the internet and internet search warrants and cell phone search warrants, these guys use the internet all of the time. And we've had to change our methods of investigation, and as a result have been very successful. We're lucky to have an animal protection unit in Wayne County. We have prosecutors that are assigned specifically to handling our animal cruelty cases. It was a long time in coming. We worked with those prosecutors over and over for years. They were eventually able to get approval to start their own unit. It's called the Animal Protection Unit, and it has made it possible for us to pursue more complicated cases because we're not going before a new prosecutor every day. We don't have to explain our cases every time they come up to somebody who's never done an animal cruelty case. And we're able to bring felony charges against a lot of these individuals, and I think the best part of it is once that felony warrant is issued, they stamp a little red paw print on it. So as these guys are going through the system, their paperwork goes through the whole system with a little red paw print on it. Now these guys they have done a lot for us. They made it possible to do what we do. And that's just sort of an overview of the types of animal cruelty cases that we see. And when we talk about animal cruelty, these are the chargeable offenses. These are the things we're able to write warrants on and take before a judge. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Cece now. Dr. Cece and I have been working together for 20 plus years, and I think, I know without Dr. Cece, a lot of our cases would not have been successful. She has always been willing to take the time to sit down with us and grind through all of the details on our cases. And I know our questions haven't always been easy. You have to hear?